This is the Financially Simple Podcast, the show dedicated to destroying the complexities of money for today's small business owner. The content in the show is for informational purposes only. This show is not investment advice. Instead, seek help from a competent financial advisor or conduct your own due diligence. Justin Goodbread, CFP, is an investment advisor representative of Heritage Investors, a registered investment advisor only conducting business in states where it is properly registered or is excluded or exempted from registration requirements. Registration is not an endorsement of the firm by securities regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. Here's your host, pizza-loving, certified financial planner, Justin Goodbread.
And welcome back to the Financially Simple Podcast. Today we're going to continue our discussion, pretty detailed discussion of our deep dive into cash flow. Now remember, we've been talking about personal finances for us business owners, and we've dealt with the income side, and we've kind of morphed over into the expense side. Last episodes, we talked a little bit about car expenses. And today I want to deal with a topic and utilize my personal life and the struggle that I had as a business owner in this last year. And I want to deal with the subject, what is the cheapest way to buy a new car? That's right. I talked about this a little bit in the last episodes. I ended up having to purchase a new vehicle here recently. And I am one who firmly believes in buying a used car. I have bought used cars for my entire life. In fact, I haven't had a car payment in my life. I don't like car payments, but I have been saving up money and I knew I wanted to buy a new vehicle or new to me vehicle. And I began looking at the marketplace. Now I drive a ton. I put about 30,000, 40,000 miles on both of our vehicles per year. We drive a lot and I needed something that could work for myself in business. But I also need something that could dual purpose or dual function for on the farm. You see, occasionally I need to pull a tractor or a trailer full of four-wheelers as I'm going out deer hunting, or a boat. Sometimes we have a boat we take down to the lake. We live right on the river here in East Tennessee, and so we take the boat out. And typically we use our Ford Excursion, which is a big beast. It's a nice vehicle. It rides good. It's a 7.3 liter diesel, gets like 25, 26 miles to the gallon. Love it to death. But in recent years, we've discovered as our kids get bigger, we need a little bit more room. And my 2007 Nissan Murano that I paid a whopping $9,000 for and put a total of 160,000 miles on that vehicle, it died. Well, it didn't quite die. It was starting to have some engine problems, and the mechanic fixed it. And he said, Justin, it's time to sell this. So I sold my Nissan Murano for $6,500. That's right. I drove a car for over 150,000 miles for roughly $2,500 worth of total expenses. Yeah, we had some maintenance and carrying cost. Whenever I looked at my Nissan Murano, I discovered that I was spending, if I annualized it out over the length of the time I had the car, roughly about $450 a month in quote payments. Okay. Even though I paid cash, even you hear people say, hey, I paid cash for a car. Ultimately, they had to save the money to pay for the car. So I began looking in the marketplace, and I noticed because of the all-time high car sales, and I dealt with this on a video years ago on YouTube about talking about the number of new car sales per year. But because of the now record-setting new car sales for many, many, many years, used cars are holding their value more so now than ever. Think about it. I sold a 2007 Nissan Murano with over 80,000 miles on it for $6,500. That is crazy stupid to me. But nonetheless, it happened. So I began the car search, and I knew I did not want to drive a non-manly car, right? I'm an old country boy. I want to be able to, at least look cool. I'm not going to go as far as putting a CB antenna and some redneck stuff that I had in my younger days, but I wanted something that I kind of feel like a man in, So I looked at crossover vehicles, and ultimately I settled on a Ford truck. So I know I needed a truck to throw some hay in the back for the farm and some grain and, buckets of paint like I had in there yesterday. Just having a truck is amazing. We actually don't have trash pickup at our house. We live so far out in the country, they don't pick trash up. So we actually have to drop our trash off at the depository, a little area where all the residents kind of meet, and they just drop it into this bin system. So a drop-off point, whatever you want to call it. So we got tired of hauling stinky trash in the Excursion, which is kind of like a suburban style vehicle. So here we have the truck now. All right. So I say all that to say this. I had to buy a truck. At least I wanted a truck. And I figured after 40 years of life that I deserved, right? That's the deserved. I'd reached a certain net worth that I wanted to achieve, and I was ready to reward myself. And we had saved cash. We had all the cash set up in the bank, and I now was approaching the dealerships. Come to find out, long story short, that I could purchase a new vehicle for cheaper than I could a used vehicle. Now, not in the pure sense of cheaper being that the price of the new vehicle was actually less dollars, but the used vehicles or new to me vehicles would have had somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 60,000 miles on the vehicles. And those 30 to 60,000 mile difference was only about $4,000 ultimately between the used vehicle price and the new market or the new vehicle price. So I elected to buy a new vehicle. I've never done that before. I've never walked into a car lot. So hence the analytical Justin, the financial planner Justin, stepped into the world of now buying a new vehicle. Now, many of you who've listened to this, you've bought many new vehicles, so you know what I'm going to talk about. But to me, as someone who is a staunch, no debt person, I was walking into the car lot with my checkbook ready to write cash. Well, just before I purchased a new vehicle, I did a podcast episode with a buddy of mine named Clay McGee, which we have since released. And we will place in the show notes a link to that particular podcast. And he changed my mind about some things as I approached the car buying industry. In the car buying industry, I was approaching it thinking that, man, I want a 0% interest loan. I really don't want to get rid of my cash. I want to hold the cash because I really believed the market was going to fall, which it did. I really believe when I purchased this that the market was going to fall. And from October to December of 2018, if I get my years right, the market fell significantly on one of the first bear markets we had in a while. So my theorem was correct. So I didn't want to get rid of my cash. So I was willing to finance it. So I approached the car dealership and I said, man, I want a 0% interest loan. Well, as I was in the discussion with the really honest car salesman, I asked the question to myself, why in the world would a bank loan money at 0% interest? They won't. They won't do that. Now, so then I asked the question, well, is 0% APR loan really a 0%? Yeah, they are. In fact, if you end up paying for a vehicle, you are going to pay 0% interest on that vehicle. So what's the catch? That's what I was asking myself. What's the catch? They're not lending money to me for free. Well, first of all, before I get into the catch, I want to outline something. Why would they offer 0% interest? Next, that was my first why. Well, as the dealer said, he goes, Justin, we have more vehicles than we need at this point. We are trying to move some inventory. And there was an overstock of vehicles, so they were trying to tempt us to sell more vehicles. They were trying to incentivize buyers to buy this particular type of vehicle. So they only had a 0% interest on a Ford truck. They didn't have it, coincidentally, on the Ford Expedition or the Ford Explorer at that time. Now they may now, but at the time they didn't. It was only on the Ford F-150. So I come to find out, okay, well, they offer a 0% interest, which means I'm not going to pay any interest expense, but they're doing it to move cars. The salesperson actually told me, he said, Justin, the way we make money is we'll offer you less on your trade-in. So if you're going to make a trade-in, we'll offer you less on that. Well, I wasn't. I went ahead and sold my car before I bought the truck, so I didn't need to have a trade-in. But I thought that was interesting. Hey, look, we're going to lower your trade-in price so we can make up our difference. Okay. Or we're going to adjust the rebates. All right, now we're getting somewhere.
You're listening to the Financially Simple Podcast. Show your support by subscribing to this and our other educational business channels at financiallysimple.com.
So as in this car dealership or in this car purchasing time period, I discovered that when the manufacturers are offering a 0% financing choice, often they will come back with a higher interest rate, but more cash rebates. So in this particular case, they were offering almost $12,000 in rebates at a non-0% interest score. And in fact, the interest rate they quoted me was 8.89%. We're going to give you a loan for 8.89%. However, we're going to offer more rebates. Now, when I heard 8.89 comparison to 0% interest, my head just did a somersault flip. I can do math pretty quickly in my head. I'm like, I realize that 8.89 is more expensive than 0, Justin. So why wouldn't you use the 0% interest rate? So as I began to calculate this number, here's what I discovered. And I'm going to tell you my actual numbers that I dealt with. The price of the vehicle, the price of the truck at a 0% interest rate was $53,000. I'm rounding the numbers. And if they offered me a 5-year term, the monthly payment would have been $883 a month. Had I not put any money down or had I not done anything different, just a pure payment, $883 a month. However, if I had taken the 8.89% interest rate on the same term, the 5-year term, the purchase price was discounted by $12,000. And now my monthly payment was $848 per month. So if you actually annualize this out, you actually ran the term of the note, the 0% interest rate would have had a total cost on it of $53,000, whereas the 8.89% high interest rate, as I consider it, would have had roughly a $2,000 less total cost, coming in at $50,934. So immediately as I was calculating this in my head, I asked the sales guy, I said, now, why is it that you would actually make less at a higher interest rate? And he said, because most people come in, they want a 0% interest rate because they think we're going to make less. When in fact, they made $2,100 more on a 0% interest rate than they did their own internal financing. So as I'm talking with the individual, I said, well, let me ask you a question. Instead of me paying the 8.89% interest rate, I know my credit score, or I have a very, very, very good credit score, one that I worked for years on. And with my credit score, I can qualify right now for a 1.5, 1.9% interest rate through my personal lender. He said, that's fine, Justin. If you want to go borrow the money from your lender, the purchase price on the vehicle is $50,500. Notice what they did there. They actually eliminated the rebates, a significant amount of rebates, and the ultimate purchase price was only $2,500 less than the 0% interest purchase price, but it wasn't near the purchase price of the high rebated position. So when I ran the scenario in my calculator of a loan at 1.9% interest rate that I borrowed from my own lender, my personal bank or credit union, whoever you would use, believe it or not, I actually use AAA for my loan. Whenever I ran the calculation, my payment was only going to be $882 a month. So now here's where it gets crazy to me. On a 0% interest rate, my payment would have been $883 a month. Had I used an outside lender, my payment would have been $882 a month, 1 point different. And had I used their high interest rate at an 8.89% interest rate, my monthly payment would have been $848 a month. If you calculate those side by side, as I'll put a graph on the Financially Simple blog showing what I'm talking about, and if you click on the link below, you'll actually get a link to the blog. The actual total cost on the 0% interest rate, as I talked about, was $53,000 because that was the purchase price and there is no interest rate on that. But at the 1.9, my total carrying cost was $52,976. We might as well say $53,000. Okay. So between the 0% interest rate and the 1.9% interest rate that I would have borrowed from the bank or ultimately borrowed from AAA was basically the same price to the $24 difference. It wasn't much. But the 8.89% interest rate came in at a total cost of $50,934. So it was a little bit less, almost $2,000 less than the 0% interest rate. Justin, that's crazy. Yeah, here's where it gets even more crazy. Here's what I ultimately did. I actually put some money down the truck, put a significant amount of money down because I didn't want to finance that much money. I just don't believe in financing having debt. I just don't. But I wanted to have a little bit of debt for carrying costs. And by the way, me making this decision, I actually made more money by having my cash on hand that had I paid cash for the vehicle. Because the market fell, I made some decisions. I bought some real estate, did some other things. And my cash on hand actually returned more than I actually paid for the vehicle. And it ended up being really good. So what I did is I went out and I bought the vehicle. And I financed it through Ford Credit at an 8.89% interest rate. Yep, you heard me right. Yours truly financed a loan, a vehicle. I financed a brand new vehicle. I'm breaking all sorts of rules here, people. I'm just, when I had a moment of weakness, went crazy here. But anyways, I went out and bought a new vehicle, brand new to me, not even a mile on the truck. I paid $41,000 for the truck with an 8.89% interest rate. And after 30 days, I refinanced that note with AAA with a $41,800 balance. I'm using the numbers. I put some down payment on it, but I'm using it for constant purposes. Ultimately, my total out the door price was $43,849. What I did is I, quote, gamed the system. Because I knew my budget, because I knew my interest rate, because I knew my credit score, because I did my homework, I ended up saving almost $10,000 less than a 0% interest loan. And I ended up saving more than had I gone out directly and bought the vehicle using a AAA or a credit union or bank. So when it comes time to buy a vehicle, which is your second most expensive expense in your life, outside your house, not including taxes, a vehicle comes in really close to the top. The way I game the system actually saved me $10,000 in my example. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. So the question is, what is the cheapest way to buy a new car? It is not, in today's marketplace, a 0% interest rate. It's not, at least the numbers that I was dealt with. It is not going to the bank or the credit union and borrowing 1.9 or 1% or whatever your interest rate is that you're eligible to get. That's not the cheapest. Clay McGee in his podcast actually gave me this idea, and I tested it, and he was right. And he comes from a position of dealing with the finance manager of multiple car dealerships for years. I then tested his theorem with a couple of other car dealers and their particular finance company. And it always came back to, if I took the maximum rebates with the highest interest rate and I would then turn around and refinance it through my local institution, or in my case, a AAA is what I used, then I end up coming out almost $10,000 cheaper on a purchase. And then what I did is, after I financed that, is I dumped a huge amount of money down on the car to get my liability in line. And now I'm paying extra payments to reduce the car. I want to have the car paid for in 3 years. Yeah, I could go in and pay cash for it all now. I could. I have no intent to do that because I'm using my cash at this point to build wealth other places. If the market goes sideways, if I lose my job, whatever, I can't lose my job, I am the job. If something happens, I can always go in and pay the vehicle off. So the ultimate question is what's the cheapest way for a business owner to buy a car? Play the game, play the system. Ultimate decision is what you're trying to do is pay less for the car, but that may require you to pay more in interest. So don't fall necessarily for the 0% interest game. See, I realize this is complicated. I realize life is hard, life is good, and life can be frustrating. And money, you're starting to deal with interest rates at car salesmen. I mean, they're good people, but my goodness, they wore me out. Money doesn't have to be that complicated, folks. Let's continue to make our lives at least financially simple. Y'all go out and make it a great day.
You've been listening to the Financially Simple Podcast. For more business and personal financial help and information, head over to financiallysimple.com today.